Oh, we're officially starting Zoom session number 3, August 8th, 2019. So these are the topics that we're going to try to cover today. First, we're going to just kind of discuss the whole concept of, what's the story that you're planning to tell about your hometown. You can't tell everything about your hometown, so you have to pick a fairly narrow topic that you can really dig into in a little bit of depth in a short period of time, kind of like Abby did with her Hopkins Legionnaire disease map. It was very focused on one single thing in one single place, which was great. I've added 3 potential sources for people. One would be to look at the 5 themes of geography. These are themes that have been around a long time. The location of the place, where is it? Absolute and relative location, we kind of did that on our map. Concept of place, what are the physical and the human characteristics of that particular place? Human environment interactions, the interaction between people and the place that they live in, and the changes that it can cause and the problems that it can cause. And every day we get another article about global warming, and today it says we're going to run out of food in certain places before long. And the other day it was one on how many places are running out of water. Movement is a theme, talking about how places are connected to other places. And then, of course, the big concept of, what is a region? Regions are created by people. So you might be able to work one of those concepts into or themes into your story about your hometown. Then the National Geographic has got a set of standards, and that I've got the link for that, which is kind of interesting, because if you go to a standard like number 1, how to use maps and other geographic representations to understand and communicate information, if you click on that, that'll take you to the standard. And then it's kind of nice as you go down, there's a 4th grade, 8th grade, and a 12th grade version of that standard. So depending on the level that you're teaching, you can kind of look through here and it just gives you some ideas. So I think that's there's 18 of these standards. I think Dave Lanergan was pretty instrumental in helping put those together. And then Lori will be familiar with this. You could even take the National History Day format, which would be that you have a thesis on some topic. It's kind of like the Esri one, the ask a geographic question, and then go through, okay, what's the background, what built up to whatever event it is, like the Legionnaire's disease that happened in Hopkins. What was the main event, and then the long-term and the short-term effect? So something along those lines. So Shauna, do you want to add anything to that?
To the geoinquiry piece?
Well, just the idea of how to organize a story for a story map.
We've really been talking about this a lot at the University of Minnesota, about how to organize stories and how to have it be compelling, and
right.
yet make sure that academic needs are satisfied. I really like this National History Day format. I hadn't looked at that in a while. And I actually was, after I looked at this, I'm like, oh, I might have to take that piece a little bit. We've really been talking about like this intro, bye Molly, an intro, and since I'm doing a lot of this to replace papers, they really want this 3-paragraph sort of all the points laid out in what, how you're supporting your thesis, but that doesn't always work in this sort of a setting, especially when the writing needs to be different. And that's a whole nother piece I could talk about, is how the writing needs to be different for a digital.
Yeah, and I think for teachers who are thinking about doing the contest, this is a critical step in helping kids develop a focus for what they're trying to do in terms of the story they're attempting to tell.
Right.
I know Lori's kids have come up with that document you made 2 or 3 years ago with all the potential topics. There were like a ton of really good examples that kids came up with. Maybe we could share that sometime, Lori. Do you still have?
Sure. Oh yeah, yep, absolutely.
Yeah, so I
I
thought,
was gonna say the history day format is, I had kind of started my thinking of using that and came away from it, but I think that's the way to go for sure. Just especially with like my kids this past year and the I don't know, the wide variety of products that I ended up with. I think they do need a little bit more, yeah,
I think,
structure.
yeah, I see that even at the undergrad level, they need some structure. There's one story I wanted, a story map, if I can find it. This one about buffaloes. That's a really good story about how to, I'll find it and I'll share it with you, but it's a really interesting piece about how to structure a story and pull people.
right. Maybe you've got access to this document. I think you can
Yep,
add.
I'll add it there.
Yeah, that'll be great. So anyway, that's in my email that I sent out. I didn't give him credit, but Charlie's point was you should know how your story is going to start, how you're going to grab people's attention, and then you should know what the end of the story is, so you're not just wandering all over the place, that you have a beginning and you have an end in mind. So getting from the beginning to the end is a more logical process. So the next thing if you're watching the video now, we're going to jump to the next section, and that is finding and downloading images for your map. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show, this is a story map I made not exactly for this purpose, but on this story map, I've got two images here. Both of these are uploaded. They are not links to URL images on the internet, which is your other option. And we're encouraging people to find images that they can download and then upload to their story map because you're not worried about the links being broken and something happening to the image.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing worse than getting that broken image icon. So I'm just going to show you the way I do it. So I'm looking for a map of Faribault. So I go to images. And my guess is there's that image right there. Now, the first thing I notice that it's 504 by 339 pixels, which is big enough for my purposes. So when I click on it, this is something different. Popped up in a little bit different way. On a Mac, if I hold the Control and Option key down, I get a little menu that gives me the option to save as. Now, I don't know what it is on a PC, but I think you have the same possibility. Google got into a legal battle with Getty Images and forced Google to change the way they let people download. So it's a little bit different than it used to be. But the beauty of this is if I go save image as, the next thing you want to do is not use that name because I have no idea what that name means. So I'm going to just change that to and I think the time was 1896. And then I get the choice of where I want it. The desktop, if I have a folder that I can choose, if I had the Faribault folder pop up, there it is right there. I could say, okay, I'm just going to put it in the Faribault folder. I'm going to save it. So that is the way I prefer doing it. I know kids kind of like to drag the image to the tab and drop it in. I don't know if that works. I don't think that does with with the story maps, I don't think there's a drag and drop option. So do any of the rest of you have a way you like to collect images?
I'd like to, the image issue is really something I'm surprised at how often I run into with undergrads. I didn't expect that to be a problem, but it really actually is. Everything from, it's not so much, I mean, they can find images in a heartbeat, but it's the literacy of being able to read the image to understand if they can use it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Be able to, and there are colleges and universities and states talking about how they are sometimes getting nabbed for using images in maps that they don't have permission to use in story maps. So I think the concept of whether you can use an image or not and how to cite it is really important. And I know for the map contest, they have to. Are you going to talk about that later? I'm sorry if I'm jumping ahead.
No, I am. I don't know that I'll get to it today, but I think that'll probably be next time. I'd like to go over item details page and, you know, how you do all that.
I do a right click on an image to download it like that, and it works great.
Works the same way.
Yep.
And I like the way that you do it. I mean, working from a Mac, Jim, but I don't know about Chromebooks. I'm such a ding dong with the Chromebooks that our kids use at Olson that I mean, would it be the best to have them make a folder in their Google Drive and drop them in there? I'm not sure. I'll have to work with that.
Hey, Sean.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is.
No, I was just going to say, you can, Sean's here twice. How did you do that, Sean? They have that exact same option that I just did. It's an alt something.
Okay.
The kids will know what it is, basically.
Okay.
So the other thing that I'm going to go back and share my screen again. So the other option you have here is right away, images may be subject to copyright. So I really technically should have a URL for this image saved. So in order to get the image URL, I have to open the image in a new tab, which opens right next door to where you are. And then here's the image. So I could copy and paste that URL and probably put it in a Google Doc. And then I would have a citation for that image. So, you know, we don't encourage people to have tons and tons of images in a story map. We'd rather see more maps, but images obviously play a big role in a story map as well. They're important parts of it. So that would be the other thing that I would recommend that people do. So does anybody else have something to add regarding images at this point?
I haven't really worried about the copyright stuff just because our audience is just, you know, our little contest. Right. But so I can see for Shauna how kids are coming into college without knowing that, because I really don't teach them that, I have to admit.
Well, Lori, I'm not saying it's all on your shoulders, believe me.
Yeah, right.
I think that if you're sharing a map within your organization, I think you're perfectly fine. It's once anything like for Abby's, once she started going public, that's where I'd want to double check her images or any of those students who are sharing.
Right. Yep. Oh, I've provided you a story map planner for a journal story map. So what I did this with a group of sixth graders in Nikki Osterholt's class a couple of years ago, kind of modified it. So in a journal story map, you have two parts. On the left-hand side, you've got a panel where you have mainly text, but you could have additional images, videos, etc. But it's kind of mainly a text-focused. And then on the right-hand side is what they call the main stage, where you can link to a live web map, you can link to another story map, you can link to a video, you can put an image. So part of planning your hometown story map would be to come up with a plan before you actually start working on your story map for, okay, section 2, we've already done a little thing about the location of your city, so you could have the live map over here. So, but what are you going to put in panel 3 and 4 and 5 and maybe 6? So I was thinking you could type your own title in. So what you would want to do is open up the link and then make a copy and give it a title that identifies it, that it's your map. Like this for me would say Jim Hansen. So I did make a copy, and here's what mine is. And you can see it says Faribault, Minnesota, Jim Hansen. So if everybody would like to, at this point in time, I'll stop the video, take a few minutes, open up this document, make a copy of it, and rename it. And I also suggested that you, up in the view, change it, unclick the print view, because then you get this space like this. If you just go unclick that, then it doesn't put that spacing in between pages like it would when you're going to print out. So why don't you just go ahead, I'll stop the video and everybody make a copy, and then we'll come back and take it from there. Well, continuing on, so okay, here's your blank version. And what I did then was I made my first panel. I found 2 images that I wanted. I found a logo for the city of Faribault. I found the saying this for the city of Faribault, and then I just had a very brief text here, and then I put a header, not a header, a title underneath the picture to identify what it was. So the next thing we want to do then is learn how to teach kids to properly start a story map journal from a web map, okay? So I'm going to go to my web map. So this is the way I would encourage you for yourself and for your kids to start a story map. So once everything has been saved, do it one more time. Step 1 is to go to the share button. And at this point, you've got some decisions to make. Who do you want to share this with? Now, you don't immediately have to share it with everyone. In fact, you can make it totally private, but if you're going to be a part of the contest, then eventually you're going to have to click the everyone public button. And at this point, we can see that if I copied this link, then put it on the internet, everybody on the internet could actually see my web map about Faribault, but that's not what I'm interested in doing. What I want to do is create a web app. And a story map is an example of a web app. So I click that, which takes me to this screen. And so at this point, I've got some options here of things I can do. Build a story map, collect data, et cetera, et cetera. We're not interested in anything, so we want to build a story map. Now you will notice up here, if you wanted to use the new story maps, you do a click here and you want to do that, but we're going to choose the story map journal. So we click select. And if you wanted to preview what's it going to look like, you can do that, but I'm just going to go directly to create web app. So at this point, it's going to have the exact same title as my web map, which I don't really want it to have. So I'm now going to change the title. Whoops. Whoops. So something very simple. You could even, if you wanted to, add that as a part of the title. I've already got 2 tags. There's really nothing I need to add. And then if I wanted to say, do that, it's going to save it in the folder. And then I'm going to click done. And it says, oh, I gave it the same title. I've already got that. So I'm just going to call it Faribault, Minnesota. You can't have 2 things the same title. All right, and that's the name of my, I have to give it something here. So I'm going to leave the comma out here. That better work. Finally. So now what it's doing is bringing you to a template where you can begin creating your story map. So when you get to this page, you've got your choice of a side panel or a floating panel. We do not want a floating panel. It simply means I could grab this panel and move it back and forth to maybe look at a map underneath, but for our purposes, we're going to stick with the side panel here. So I click start. So for the last chance, for right now, what do you want to call your story map? Journal. So I'm going to go with what I've got. I'm not going to make another change. I could at this point take a tour if I wanted to. So now it brings me to this page where I've got the side panel on the left and the main stage. So the first thing is the main stage, okay? So it's asking me, do you want a map, an image, a video, or do you want a link to a web page? Well, I want an image. So I'm going to click that and I'm going to upload it. So I'm going to go find that Faribault folder. Now I happen to have now 2 copies. I think that's the one I downloaded today, and I think this is the one I had before. So I'm going to pick the one that I've used before. I'm going to open that. So now I've got another decision. Do I want it to fill the entire space? Do I want it to fit so it won't be cropped? Do I want it to stretch it out so it does fill the whole space, or do I want to actually center it? My recommendation is that you pick fit. You can come back and change this if you don't like the way it looks. And then Shauna thinks this is important to do. This is a and this is for people who are, their sight is impaired, so at least they could know what is in that other panel. So now when I click next, it's now bringing me to the left-hand side. So now I was smart enough that I did this. I've got my everything that I want here. So I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to go back to my, if I can find the right one here. I'm going to paste that in. And I'm going to center it. And now I want that image. So now when I press return, I've got some choices. I can add another image here. So if I click this, it says, okay, where's that image that you want? I'm going back to my Faribault folder. And I've got the Faribault banner. So I'm going to open that. And add that information. Now, once it's in here, I'm going like, oh, I don't want it really that big. So I'm going to grab the corner here and make it a little smaller. I'm going to center it. I thought I was going to center it. Why doesn't it center? Weird. I don't know why it's not centering. Okay. And I don't want that. Wonder if I can just delete that by itself, can I? All right, now I want the rest of my content. So I go back to my planner. Copy it. Go to my story map, paste it. Now, whoa, I know what happened there. I think I'm inside the banner. Is that right, Shauna?
That's what it looks like. It looks like you're typing a caption to the image, but
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out. I need to get
maybe
down.
go. Yeah.
I didn't have this problem the other day. Let me see again. Huh. It's funny, I practiced this the other day and it worked fine.
Oh, it always does that.
Now I can't make it not boldface. Okay, so what I'm going to do.
Click add and then maybe come back into it. And
Yeah,
let's see
that's what I was thinking, right? The same thing.
It's good to see this too, because you know it's going to happen to the kids. So
Yep.
this is
Yep,
good troubleshooting
exactly.
to see.
I don't know how you can't, why you're stuck in that image.
Well, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste my text here. Then
And
go
then
back and put the image in. I can't figure out why I cannot make that not bold-faced. Anyway, to kind of short circuit the process, I should be able now go back, insert that image. And usually you can, it's funny, it's not allowing me to. And, oh, I see it added all these extra things on here. I haven't had this problem before. This is interesting. And then I'm going to add my last image of the main street. So the image caption, I'm going to change that to and save it. So now I've got everything I had before. Now this, I would like to be dark, so I'm just going to highlight it. I don't know why the default is gray. Center it, save it. So now essentially I've recreated. I've got this. I think I could get rid of that right there if I wanted to, couldn't I? I'm sure I can. Anyway, so now the tricky thing here, you think you saved it, but if you look in the upper right-hand corner, you didn't actually save it. You've just saved what you did over here, but to save everything now, I have to click this. And so now I've got the first part of my story map done, and to add the next section, I just click the add button and we begin the process all over. I have to give it a title, decide what I want on the right-hand side, et cetera, et cetera. So that basically takes you through the step of making the first panel of your story map. So what I'd like you to do, I'm gonna unshare here. First of all, does anybody have any questions before I unshare?
So, Jim, is it safe to say, or Shauna for that matter, that a section is equivalent to a slide?
Yes.
Okay.
And the bad news is you cannot change the location of this first slide. It's locked into first place. Anything you add after this, you could add 10 sections. You can move them up, down, delete them, whatever you want to do. You can't delete this. You could go back and redo it, but you can't move it around. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it's an anchored home slide, if you will.
Yep, it's basically a title slide.
Yep.
So what I would like you to do is, can you see me or not?
Yep, we can see you.
I am the speakers on the screen?
Yep.
Okay. So what I'd like you to do is go to your web map of your hometown and see if you can go through that process and create that first page, knowing that it may not be the final version of that page, but it'll be your first attempt at that. And while you're working, I'm going to turn my video off. If you have a question, we've built one side of our story map, and the discussion just came up, which you didn't hear because we didn't record it, is what happens when you add a map on the main stage. There are some things that you need to go through. So I'm going to just quickly go through that process. So I've got my first panel done. So the next panel is going to be about the location of Faribault. So I'm just going to call it that. And now I want to use a map. So it's giving me a choice in my drop down here of a map to use, and I'm going to use the one called location. There's the map I want. I see the directions on it. I picked the wrong map. Whoop, what happened?
Jim, click the back button in the lower left. See what, there you go.
Okay, so did I get the new layer?
I don't think so.
I don't think I did either.
There you go.
Okay, now
Yeah.
custom configuration. So there it is. That's the map I actually wanted. It shows me Faribault. So this is a little bit of troubleshooting going on. We're learning that. So I kind of position it and I save that. The content I'm leaving as is because there's nothing I want to show other than that. And why not show a pop-up for Faribault? So I'm going to let that be part of what's there.
Hey, Jim, why don't you walk through that content just to show what it does, the custom content configuration?
Okay, this is the wrong map to do it with because the
Oh,
only
okay.
thing that's
Never
on
mind.
there.
Yeah, do it later.
Yep. So, okay, so then I've done that. Now, if I add the overview map and a legend, which is not a bad idea, then I'm just going to click next. So I'm going to do something real simple is okay, so I've now added my second panel. The pop-up for Faribault shows up with its latitude and longitude. If I click here, I know that that's Nicollet Island. If I click on here, I know that it's 61 minutes to travel to Minneapolis. I know that it's, so I've got some basic information here. Plus the overview map now kind of shows me where this is in context with everything else, okay? So Shauna said, okay, I want to show something else about Faribault. So if I do this, all right, so I'm going to pick something else to put over here on the right-hand side. So if I highlight this, this activates this little bar right here. And so now I can do some other things, one of which is to change the main stage content. So if I click on it, it says, well, what map do you want to use? Well, I don't want to use that same map. I want to use this one. And I'm going to check custom configuration again. So it's loading the map. And this time I want to be zoomed more into Faribault. So now I've got a good close-up of Faribault. So I'm going to save that location. Now, I've got a bunch of layers here, and the one I want is US cropland. So that's now turned on. I've saved that. And I think there should be a pin for Faribault. I'm going to put that in there so people can see where Faribault is. I'm going to save that. And I think that's the only thing else I need to do. I'm not going to, so now I'm going to apply that. Now, the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight this with a different color, blue. I'm going to save it. So I've got an issue they want me to fix. I'm going to find out. It's probably that layer on cropland that I'm using. They don't like it. So premium content, I'm going to go, okay, all right, everything's good now. It's letting me use all those layers. So now here's what I've done. So when I go from this panel to this panel, if I click on this, it takes me to that map with the layer of all the cropland on it. And now I actually have a legend. I can see there's a lot of corn and a lot of soybeans. And if I click on any one of these places, it's going to tell me what's there. So basically, without having to go to another panel, I've added more information on one side, and I can always go back to the original panel. And now I've saved it. So I'm going to stop there. And I'm going to, does anybody have a question about what I just did? Okay, it's 10:20. I just want to check and see how far we are in terms of what we have covered. Yes.
What would be the advantage to that as opposed to just adding another section?
Well, I did it here because I'm really just talking about the location of Faribault. Where is it? And this kind of plots it in. Now, if I wanted to do an extensive thing just about agriculture, then I'd probably have a separate panel just about agriculture. But I just wanted to say, yeah, it's located in the middle of a farming area, and the map clearly shows that that's exactly where it's located. So that was the only point I was attempting to make.
So just that there is the capability within each section to link out to various views.
Right. In fact, you could have multiple links done
Right.
that
And some
exact
could
same way
be-
if you wanted to.
some
I
could
don't know
be
that I would
limited.
necessarily do it, but it's, and if you wanted to say switch from a map to an image, like I'm trying to make a point about something and I could pop up the image so they could see that, that's the other way to go. So if this is my original story map, so for instance, a notable person from Faribault was the only Heisman Trophy winner from the state of Minnesota. His name is Bruce Smith. He won the Heisman Trophy in 1941. I used to caddy for him when he played golf back in the 50s and the 60s. But what I did here is I went and found a YouTube video that shows Bruce Smith.
The 1940 All-American Bruce Smith ran 80 yards against arch rival Michigan to give the Gophers a 7-6 victory, the famed Little Brown Jug and the Big Ten title. It was the golden age.
And then that back button appears that will just take you back to the original setting.
Yeah. And that takes me back here.
Gotcha.
And just this picture of Bruce Smith hung in my 10th grade American Histories teacher room. In the front of the room above him, he was a kind of a big Bruce. So anyway, like here I'm on Faribault today, St. Mary's. So if I click here, it takes me into that location, which the base map there I don't like. And then I could say, if you want more information, you can go to the website for the school. You can add that information into it. So and that takes you away from the story map to the web page for that. You could literally put the web page over here too. So there are several options of things you could do. The reason I chose the video that I did for Bruce Smith was because it was super short. It's like a minute. So I would encourage, if people are going to use videos, that they keep them 3 or less minutes long, pretty much.
Yep, that all makes perfect sense. Thanks.
So that gives you another option that you can do when you're creating your story map. So, all right, I hate to do this again. I'm going to go back to share. I want to see where we are in terms of our agenda for today. So we have gone through the story map journal. We've done the tools. We've added an image. We haven't done all these things, but those are options that you can do. Side panel tools, we've kind of taken a look at those. And we haven't done the item detail page formatting. So at this point, I don't know that we need to continue on. I think there's enough here for you guys to get started on your story map of your hometown, and that our final session that you would return with at least a couple of panels completed, maybe not the whole entire thing. And then sometime prior to